Dougal Sharp, nice to meet you, and thank you for being here. Founder and CEO of Innis Gunn. Welcome to Behind the Beers. Can you tell us a little bit sort of about how you started? As I understand it, you got into the business after a fire in Edinburgh.
Yeah, I was actually, I started making beer, or started in the brewing industry about age 14. It was when Dad bought this brewery in Edinburgh. And at the time, that brewery was making beer for working man's clubs in the north of England. I had no local business whatsoever. And the brewery owners, this other company in England that owned the brewery, decided to shut it down. And so Dad and a few of his colleagues and contacts got together and bought this brewery in Edinburgh, but it had no local business whatsoever. And as a result of that, in the very early days of that business, trade was very slow and it was very small and they were skint, they had no money. Mm-hmm. So I was available at £1 an hour, 14. I was able to do almost a good day's work. So I was wheeled in, weekends, school holidays, that sort of thing, to work. And as I grew up and I went through school and university, I just kind of continued. Every holiday I had, I just worked in a brewery, in the brewery. And
what were your tasks? What were the jobs you were set to do?
Total, all the shit of the day that nobody else wanted to do. Opening returned kegs and casks and emptying them out, washing them, sweeping floors, maintenance, painting stuff, And then as I became more skilled, as I became stronger, then I would go out on the delivery lorries delivering beer. And then eventually, by the time I was graduating from university, I was in the brew house, but just standing there brewing. Mm-hmm. And it was quite interesting because that brewery had this incredible old Victorian brew house. So it had direct fired coppers, brewing copper, open coppers, which was a real sight to behold when because there was three of them in a line. When the three of them were boiling, it was quite the sights and the sounds of this brew house.
And the smells as well, isn't that?
Yeah. Oh, it was amazing.
Old Ricky's known as Old Ricky for a reason.
Well, that's right. 42 breweries at peak time in Edinburgh. Wow. That's extraordinary. So,
how many are left now?
One. So it's a big change, and I mean, God, you could do a whole program on that. I mean, the history of the city and its relationship with brewing is extraordinary.
Yeah.
I just I soaked it all up over the years. And really got into working in a brewery. But then the year I got my final results, when I graduated from university, the brewery burnt down, or at least the old original maltings building. Mm-hmm. This brewery was built in 1869. It still had flat bottom wooden malt silos.
Yeah.
And this 1869 wiring went wrong, and this building burnt down. So my dad phoned me up probably after about 6 months after the fire, and he said, "Look, I know you had plans, because I was away off on a different career path." And he said, "Can you come in and help? Just help us rebuild the thing, mm-hmm. and then hopefully you can then go off and do whatever you were going to do." So my first real job in life after graduating from uni was to go in and rebuild this Victorian brewery from the smouldering ashes. And it was a huge challenge, but I've always been an optimist, and I just thought, well, I can do this if I put my mind to it, and I learned as much as I could about the process, and I rebuilt it, with a team of others, and we rebuilt this fabulous old Victorian brewery from the ground up. And it was during that Dad sort of handed me this folder that contained all the beer recipes that they were currently brewing, and said, why don't you sort of familiarize yourself with the theory rather than actually the practice of brewing. And it piqued my interest, and I got into it, and I read more about how you make beer and the theory behind it. And I really got into it. And then he said to me, well, have a bash, make up a beer recipe, and we'll brew it.
What did you study at university, if you don't mind me asking?
Chemistry.
Okay, so yeah, there's a correlation there, right, between the chemistry of brewing and getting involved in the science of it all.
It was definitely helpful. I think the biggest help from forever, I've always been interested in cooking. I'm a passionate home cook, and I really get that from my granny, and she was a school dinner lady, and I just remember her telling me all these recipes, and we would stand and cook together, and it cued me into flavour as a thing. And I would say that of the two things, obviously my cooking and my sort of background in flavour that's created, or chemistry, I think of the two, it's probably the cooking that stood me in better stead, because I understand flavour, I think, in a way that's very helpful to beer making. And so the first few recipes that I brewed as sort of like new recipes, and were disastrous. They were absolute rubbish. Undrinkable. God help the poor souls that had to drink the stuff. But I persevered, and Dad supported me, and then I began to sort of get tuned in and understand. And I was lucky to study with some great master brewers around the UK and build my sort of knowledge and skill. And so I really enjoyed the process. When you're that age, early 20s, going around learning in breweries, and it was an incredible journey.
And was brewing itself going through change at that time? I mean, things have obviously evolved fairly significantly recently, but it must have been an interesting time to be involved in the process side.
Well, I think it was the first time for a long time, I think, there had been real positive change in the beer industry, and that was in the sort of late 80s and early 90s, and I very luckily was a part of that. And in the products that we were making at Caledonian, we actually then helped to drive it, and that was a real privilege and a very exciting time, because there was a genuine change in the way that consumers viewed beer. And it was just a fabulous time. And as I brewed more, I learned more, and we got tuned in to what the consumer wanted, and it culminated in winning Champion Beer of Britain in 2002, which was it was the first Scottish beer ever to win that award.
And what was that beer?
Duker's IPA.
Okay, yeah, okay.
So it was a great honour for the company, and it was a great privilege to have played such a part, leading the sort of recipe development, and it really excited me as to what beer could do. But it also, at the time I was incredibly frustrated, because we were putting huge amount of effort into making great beer. And when I then went into the on-trade and saw at times what was being delivered from the bar in terms of quality, it wasn't always maybe as you'd want it.
Yeah.
Certainly not as it would be leaving the brewery in terms of quality. And again, when you look at what was available in supermarkets and off licenses, everything was so boring. I'm sorry if people have a different view to that, but that's certainly my perspective. And it all looked the same, it all tasted the same. It was monotonous, and I felt beer had become devalued by what was going on in the marketplace. And then when I looked at the guys, the companies like the spirit companies, the wine companies, who were creating these beautiful products, they were crafted in every sense of the word. The products in the bottles and the cans, or the bottles, looked incredible, and the packaging told a story. And I thought, we're way off the pace here in the beer industry. We talk about choicest malt and hops, and these guys are talking about terroir and grape varieties and climates and soils and barrel types and lengths of maturation, and we are going brewed with choice malt and hops for a smooth flavour. And I think, what the hell? We must do better. This isn't right. And luckily, coincidental to that, while I was at Cali, I was experimenting with some different barrels in conjunction with a big whiskey distillery. And we were putting different beers in these barrels, and I had decided to put a big sort of fully flavour-packed Scottish ale into a very strong Scottish ale into one of these whiskey barrels, just as a wee experiment. And when I tasted it for the first time, it just blew me away, and it was that discovery, that moment where I tried this oak whiskey cask matured beer. I thought, wait a minute, here is something that I can emulate what these guys are doing in the spirits and wine companies with a product that lives up to the expectation.
And was anyone else doing a similar thing at the same time, or had anyone else sort of tried it beforehand?
Not that I was aware of, but I mean, I think there were definitely. I think the American craft brewing scene was already sort of up and running by that point. And I think some of those guys were doing experiments with bourbon barrels and things. But of course, we were in Scotland. We had Scotch whiskey barrels, So
and it worked.
And it worked. And I remember we had a meeting with the buyer from two beer buyers from very big British supermarket chains. And they tried this sort of total prototype. It was just basically from an oak barrel and into a glass. I said, "Try this," and they both said they tried it. They looked shocked for about 5 minutes, and then they both turned around and said, "Right, as soon as you can put this in a bottle, we'll put it in our shops."
Yeah.
And I thought, right, that's it. I'm going to do this. And unbelievably, the family company wasn't interested at the time. So I thought this is a perfect cue to leave. So I left and set Innis Gunn up. And the mission really was to walk our own path, to not copy what everyone else in the industry was doing, because I thought that was boring. It was undervaluing what I believe as a passionate brewer as an incredibly vibrant, beautiful product. And I wanted to say very clearly through the design of our packaging and everything that we did, the product in this bottle is different. The way it tastes is different. The way you can consume it is different. And the way it looks is completely different to everything else that's out there. So we went on a total journey. We put it in a clear glass bottle. We used this new labeling technology, which now is quite commonplace, but it wasn't back then. We had 4 labels, which was very unusual. We had a beer with a high alcoholic strength, certainly for the British market. And we used all these unusual flavor descriptive terminology words on the packaging to describe the experience that you would get when drinking the product. And, of course, everyone in the sort of establishment looked at the product and went, "Oh, this will never work. How can this is madness. It's the wrong bottle, wrong strength, wrong size, everything's wrong."
Yeah.
But the point was, it wasn't trying to be like them. It was trying to be like Innis Gunn. The original. And that ethos has sort of permeated everything we've done since.
So you effectively stood out from the crowd, because it's obviously a fairly busy marketplace out there, but you stood out from the crowd by doing things completely differently.
Yeah, and it wasn't, I wasn't trying to be slavish about it and sort of stand out for the sake of it. I had a great product, and you had a great product. But what I needed to do was make sure that the packaging could convey that, and to say to people, this is special, it's different. It's not like all these 500 ml brown bottles with boring labels, with boring names saying the same stuff.
Yeah.
Because I still to this day passionately believe that beer is a wonderful product, and the more we can do to elevate it, the better it is for the whole industry, the whole category. And it is what we do to this day. And we were very lucky in the early stages. The two supermarkets that I told you about did put it in to all their shops, which I have to say gave us a few headaches in terms of trying to get organised and get all that production. But we got there, and it immediately became popular with consumers.
Mm-hmm.
And then very quickly we internationalized it, and we went to Sweden, we went to Canada and other markets. And again, I think that the connection with Scotland and maturation and whiskey, I think, has been a huge positive, because we are in Scotland home to some of the greatest distillers in the world. And of course, we've got access to all these amazing barrels, which has fueled the imagination of the whole company and the types of products that we innovate.
Yeah. I mean, I think being Scottish has also sort of contributed to the success, right? It's part of you, it's part of the brand, it's part of the beer, and it's helped you get ahead, as I say, in a pretty crowded marketplace.
Yeah. Well, I mean, don't forget, it wasn't crowded when we launched. We were really right out on a limb. It's great watching what's happened over recent years with the emergence.
What year was the launch?
2003.
Okay.
So it was a very uncluttered market back then, and we were really sort of leading the pack and beginning to change the market back then. And it's been great watching what's happened subsequent to that. In recent years, there's been a real momentum change in beer, and I think the interesting thing now is, I think craft is at a crossroads, that it needs to move now into the mainstream. It's probably got all the IPA drinkers that's going to find.
Yeah.
And, now the question is, where do we go next with this? And, we launched lager back in 2013, something like that. And, that now, despite Original being our flagship beer, our barrel-aged range being our flagship products, lager's volume and growth is astonishing, because it is crossing into the mainstream, and it is persuading the mainstream consumer that you can drink a beer that has a very different delivery to a pint of the usual.
Yeah.
And that's great. That was what I always hoped.
Yeah. And it's still a great product, right? It's still a fresh lager is still, up there as a great product to consume.
It is. It's funny. I mean, some companies seem to believe that because lager is of a certain way, that is somehow bad. I don't see it that way at all. I mean, I think if you look at, there are some great big brands out there that are consistent, they taste good, there's everything you'd want about a big mass product. But my job has always been, okay, we see that and we love it, but I just don't subscribe. I think I can do better. Yeah. And it's, the proof is in the pudding, where I think we've brewed a lager which is absolutely on fire. It is achieving that sort of mass market penetration that shows to me that the right product, the right packaging can do that. And that, I think, is really exciting.
It's not in Switzerland yet, I don't think.
I don't think so. I mean, internationally, we tend to lead with Original, because it's, it's that sort of single malt whiskey cask matured Scottish ale. It's easy for the consumer to get. I think for us, it's an ownable territory. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to get. Yeah.
And in terms of the Original, I saw that you recently ran a campaign where you offered some free beer to people for being themselves, as a marketing campaign. And why was that particularly important to you?
Well, the thing is, when I launched Innis Gunn Original, it was quite a long time ago now, so I was young enough and naive enough to believe that it would be okay. And inevitably, as you grow up, you sort of become less. Well, I certainly did. I became less confident in that, not in the product, but in myself. Uh-huh. as that sort of, with that positioning of just going right, or just walking my own path. And it was, a few years, certainly latterly, I felt that I didn't have that confidence. And then it was through various things that happened in my life. And but then that came back, and I realized how important that is. That company ethos is all important.
Yeah.
Because we're never stronger than when we're doing our own thing. When we're being our most authentic self, we're being totally true to ourselves, and we can be true with the people around us, and that is when we're at our best. It's when we try to live a life that does, wear clothes that don't suit you. That's when the problems start, and we've made those mistakes. We've done things, when we've copied other companies and the things that they've done, it's never worked out. But when we do our own thing, unashamedly,
that's when we're good. And it's true for everyone, and it's true for everyone. It's true at a corporate level, on a personal level, and there's so much bullshit out there, isn't there, that it's so obvious, that we need to just kind of do our own thing and be ourselves, and that's when we're sort of closer to happiness, really, or closer to feeling fulfilled.
Well, that's what I think, and it took me a long time to get comfortable with that. You follow me? It was a journey,
Well,
as it is with everybody.
That's a sign of our age, I think, Dougal. That's more just a few more trips around the planet.
Well, that's right. But and I'm really lucky that I got back to this place.
Yeah.
And the advertising campaign, I just really wanted to share that actually being yourself is okay.
Yeah.
And so we did a survey right across the UK, and we looked into attitudes of people around, what it means to be authentic and what it means to be true to yourself. And we uncovered some extraordinary stuff that many Britons feel they can't be themselves. They can't be themselves with a partner. They can't be themselves at work. In all sorts of different social settings. And I just think that in saying it's okay to be you, I just feel it's something really powerful, and I hope that you can see that by the products that we make, and in the way that we talk about them, and in the way we package them up, and in the things that we do as a company.
Yeah.
To say it's okay to be you. It's okay to express your originality, or your authenticity, and to be your best version of you.
Yeah.
Because it's okay, and that's I think the acceptance that I've come to know now our fans have for what we do, and that's, I think, really exciting.
Is there any pushback to it? Is there any sort of counter argument?
Well, not that I've heard, but we live in a highly connected age, and I'm sure somebody will.
Yeah.
But I think again, you've got to have the confidence. We do what we do, and if you don't like what we do, that's fine.
Yeah.
We won't appeal to everybody with the products that we make, but for the people who do like our products, and there are lots of those now, they absolutely love us. We've got one of the strongest loyalty scores of any brand, not just beer, any brand. Once you're in, horrible marketing word, once you're in our funnel, you're in. You stay, because our beers they're different to the norm.
Yeah,
they taste different. They're very well crafted. I'm a big believer in flavor and balance, and so that's a hallmark of all of our beers. But we accept they're not for everyone, and if they're not for you, then that's great. I hope we find the one that is, and but we are just going to keep doing what we're doing. As I say, we've made the mistake of trying to go down the road that others have gone, and every time we do it, we fuck it up.
Go down your own path, right? Make your own path.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, good for you. And that's I think it's a great cause to champion. I think it's an important one right now as well, for people to find their own voice, and for people to find out, to be themselves. And Yeah.
There's a lot of misery out there just now. You know, everyone's in a very difficult situation with various lockdowns in various different countries, and you know, there's all sorts of consequences yet uncovered. And I think, you know, now more than ever, I think it's okay to be honest and accepting of, you know, whatever you are and however you are. You've got to accept it and try and build from that, because we're all in a varying degrees of, you
Rebuilding.
know, lockdown fatigue.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and we're slowly sort of coming out of it, and hopefully, you know, we'll there are better days ahead for us to enjoy better times together and enjoy just being.
I'll tell you something. I mean, even people that don't drink are telling me now, I can't wait to go to the pub. You know, it's like everybody in the UK, I don't know what it's like in Switzerland, but everybody now is absolutely desperate just to go to the pub, to celebrate, to socialise with not just, you know, your bubble, but your wider family, your friends. And I think, you know, if there's one thing that I hope does come out of this situation, it's that, you know, that our love affair, particularly in Britain, our love affair with the pub is rekindled.
Yeah.
And I think today there is so much other choice. You know, you don't have to go to the pub and drink alcohol if you don't want. You know, pubs do everything these days, including a great, you know, non-alcohol or low alcohol offering these days. And you know, that. So I think for us Brits, I think the pub is almost like a common room. You know, it's a sort of place you go and hang out. You know, in other countries, the coffee shops have that. You know, that sort of role. But I just can't wait to get things reopened and just watch as the trade returns. You know.
And have you got a date? Have you been given a date in Scotland? Not yet.
Not yet. Not yet. What's happening?
Pubs, bars, maybe for the end of April, I think.
Right, good.
Yeah, I think it's looking up. I think it's sort of going through the federal courts at the moment. I'm not entirely sure. As you say, we've all got a bit of lockdown. We're fed up with it all, and we sort of tuned out of all the information. So, but I think it's the end of April, and things will slowly but surely sort of reopen, and we'll get there in the end.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, the beer goes on regardless. And, you know, it's, I think one of the interesting things that's happened in lockdowns, certainly in the UK, is that people have been experimenting because they've been stuck at home. They've been spending more on better beer because they can't go out and spend, you know, in an on-trade environment.
Yeah.
So we have seen, and I know that others in our sort of in what I would describe as the modern beer gang, you know, have seen huge growth and huge increases in their share because of this trend where consumers are sat at home going, if I can't go out, I'm going to buy something better.
Yeah.
Buy something different. I'm going to experiment with a pack of different beers. You'll have seen that, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
I mean, and it raises the question, sort of, you know, what's next for those bigger sort of mainstream brewers? You know, where are they going to sort of find their place going forward? Because it's been so drastic, the change in people's tastes and sort of consumer habits. You sort of wonder how these other guys are going to adapt.
Well, they have to share the stage with more players. That's it. You know, there's no getting away from that. This is never going back. And you know, I think as an industry, I think as we rebuild out of this pandemic, I think it's important that we all work together, because the consumer has changed. And our jobs now is to make sure that we are delivering to the consumer the things that they now demand and expect.
Yeah.
And for sure, the big guys are on there. But there are beers like Innis Gunn that have walked onto the stage and announced, you know, our presence, and people people are applauding it, and I think that's the name of the game now.
I agree. Well, we applaud it here, and that's probably a nice way to finish it. I mean, it's we enjoy stocking your beers. Our customers enjoy your beers, and long may it continue.
Well, it's very much appreciated, Ian. It's Pierre was telling me that things are going well there, and it's great to see. And as I say, we really appreciate you working with us, and everything that we can do to help drive things forward for you, we'll do.
Very good of you. Cheers, Dougal. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Good.
Before we go, I do have a quick fire round for you, which is just a sample of a few questions. So we'll just kick off, and they're pretty short answers. So on we go. Right. Favorite board game?
Monopoly.
Sushi or fish and chips?
Fish and chips.
If you could teach one subject at school, what would it be?
Confidence.
Murrayfield or Hampden Park?
Murrayfield.
Favorite Spice Girl?
Oh, coriander. Not a girl though, unfortunately.
Proclaimers or Deacon Blue?
Oh, both of them.
Both of them. Wow. Double whammy. What is something that you cannot do?
I can't spell necessary.
I can't spell necessary.
Fucking infuriating. I'm a grown man. I've been spelling my whole bloody life, and I can't spell necessary. It's appalling.
Every time it gets, isn't it? Every time. What is something that you're really fed up with?
Oh God. Nothing.
Yes or no? Do you think there is life on other planets?
Yes.
And final question: what is one thing that your mum or dad taught you that changed your life?
That's a good one. Beer making.
There we go. Awesome. Thank you very much. Dougal, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. That's Dougal Sharp from Innis Gunn. Really appreciate it. Thanks very much for your time, and hope to catch up soon.
Yeah, for sure. Hope to see you in person at some point.
Sounds good. Cool.
All right, buddy.
Cheers. All the best.
Good to see you.
Okay, and you. Cheers. Bye.